7 perennials that flourishes without any fertilizer. What if some of the most beautiful, the most continuously blooming, the most genuinely spectacular perennials in the entire garden world actually perform better, bloom more freely, grow more compactly, look more beautiful, when you stop feeding them entirely? What if the fertilizer you have been carefully, faithfully, expensively applying to certain plants in your garden is not helping them at all, but actually making them worse? Causing lush, floppy, flower-shy growth, encouraging soft, pest-susceptible stems, producing exactly the opposite of the compact, vivid, free-flowering display you were trying to create? Here is the truth that experienced gardeners discover, often after years of unnecessary feeding, that some perennials evolved in lean, poor, nutrient-limited soils and are physiologically calibrated for exactly those conditions. They do not want fertilizer. They do not need fertilizer. And when you give them fertilizer anyway, with the best intentions, you are actively working against their natural performance rather than supporting it. Today we are celebrating 7 perennials that flourish without any fertilizer whatsoever. Plants that reward neglect over nutrition, that thrive in lean conditions, and that give you some of the most beautiful and most rewarding garden displays available for the price of simply planting them and leaving them alone. Let's get into every single one. Before we get into this list, if you are new here, welcome. Please hit that subscribe button right now and tap that bell icon so you never miss a video. And if today's content saves you time and money while making your garden more beautiful, please give it a like. It genuinely helps our channel reach more gardeners just like you. We truly appreciate every single one of you. Now, let's get into it. Brief problem setup / why the topic matters. Let us briefly understand the science behind why certain perennials actually perform worse with fertilizer. Because once you understand this, everything about growing these plants becomes clearer, simpler, and more successful. Fertilizer, particularly nitrogen-rich fertilizer, drives vegetative growth. It tells plants to produce more leaves, more stems, more above-ground green material. For plants that evolved in nutrient-rich environments, this additional nutrition supports the vigorous, productive growth they are designed for. But plants that evolved in lean, poor, nutrient-limited soils, Mediterranean hillsides, dry prairies, rocky alpine slopes, thin coastal soils, have a completely different physiological relationship with nutrients. They evolved to produce flowers abundantly as a survival strategy in stressed conditions, putting reproductive energy into flowers and seeds when vegetative growth is limited by poor nutrition. Give them rich nutrition and they redirect that energy into lush vegetative growth instead, producing lots of beautiful foliage with significantly fewer flowers. The lean soil that seems like a hardship is actually the trigger for their most spectacular performance. 7 plants, 0 fertilizer. Let's meet them all. List item number 1, lavender, lavandula. Our first no-fertilizer flourishing perennial is the iconic, fragrant, irresistibly beautiful lavender. And this Mediterranean native is perhaps the clearest example of a plant that is actively harmed rather than helped by well-intentioned feeding. Lavender evolved on thin, rocky, alkaline, nutrient-poor Mediterranean hillsides where the soil provides minimal nutrition and drainage is instant and complete. In these lean conditions, lavender produces its most compact, most densely branching, most floriferous growth. Tight, silver-gray mounds covered in abundant, intensely fragrant flower spikes that make it one of the most celebrated garden plants in the world. Apply fertilizer, particularly nitrogen-rich general feeds, and the transformation is immediately visible and immediately disappointing. The plant produces lush, rapid, soft, open growth with stems too floppy to stand properly and significantly fewer flowers than lean soil specimens produce. The compact, beautiful mounding form that makes lavender so visually perfect collapses into a loose, sprawling, leggy plant that looks nothing like the garden magazine lavender you imagined. In containers and garden borders, grow lavender in lean, gritty, well-drained compost or soil with no fertilizer whatsoever. If container lavender needs any input at all, which established plants rarely do, a single light application of a low-nitrogen, high-potassium fertilizer in early spring is the absolute maximum. Beyond this, leave it completely alone. The lean conditions will reward you with the most compact, most intensely fragrant, most abundantly flowered lavender you have ever grown. List item number 2, Coneflower, Echinacea. Plant number 2 is the bold, beautiful prairie native coneflower, Echinacea. And this North American wildflower is another plant that performs its very best in the lean, poor, well-drained soil conditions that its prairie origins dictate. Echinacea evolved on the Great Prairies of North America, landscapes of thin, often poor, well-drained soil where nutrient availability is modest, and where the plants that thrive are those that can extract maximum flowering performance from minimum soil nutrition. In these lean conditions, coneflowers produce sturdy, upright, self-supporting stems that stand firm through summer storms and windy conditions without staking. They produce compact, well-proportioned plants with vivid, richly colored flowers of excellent substance and form. Fertilize container or border Echinacea generously, and you get exactly the opposite. Tall, floppy, weak-stemmed plants that collapse in the first summer rainstorm. Lush foliage at the expense of flower production. Soft stems that are more susceptible to disease and pest pressure, and a general loss of the compact, vigorous character that makes prairie-native coneflowers so beautiful and so reliable. Plant an average to lean, well-drained soil in full sun. Water to establish. Then leave completely alone. Your coneflowers will reward this non-intervention with years of sturdy, vivid, abundantly flowering, completely self-supporting performance that improves naturally with each passing season. List item number 3, Catmint, Nepeta. Number 3 is the beautifully fragrant cloud-like catmint, Nepeta, and this aromatic Mediterranean perennial shares lavender's evolutionary history of lean soil adaptation and shares lavender's negative response to unnecessary fertilization. Catmint evolved in dry, rocky, nutrient-limited soils across the Mediterranean basin and Central Asia, conditions that produce the compact, densely branching, prolifically flowering plants that make this perennial so celebrated. In lean soil, catmint forms those beautiful, tight, fragrant mounds covered in soft lavender blue flower spikes that become a haze of color and bee activity from late spring through summer. The growth is compact, the stems are firm, and the flowering is generous. In fertilized, nutrient-rich conditions, catmint becomes a completely different plant. Lush, fast, soft growth that sprawls and flops. Open, less densely branching structure that loses the beautiful mounding form. And significantly fewer flowers relative to the amount of growth produced. The lean soil flowering trigger replaced by the nutrient-rich vegetative growth response. Grow catmint in lean to average, well-drained soil with no feeding. The simple post-first flush cutback that triggers reblooming is the only intervention this plant ever needs. Everything else, including the fertilizer, is unnecessary at best and counterproductive at worst. List item number 4, Yarrow, Achillea. Number 4 is the tough, flat-topped, drought-defying Yarrow, Achillea, and this ancient, historically celebrated perennial is one of the most dramatically responsive to lean soil conditions of any plant on today's entire list. Yarrow has grown on thin, rocky, dry, nutrient-poor soils across the temperate world for thousands of years. It was used medicinally by ancient Greeks, Romans, and indigenous cultures worldwide precisely because it thrives so reliably in the lean, disturbed soils of roadsides, meadows, and hillsides where many other plants struggle. This lean soil adaptation is encoded in every aspect of its garden performance. In poor, lean, well-drained soil with no fertilizer, Yarrow produces compact, upright, firmly self-supporting plants with flat-topped flower clusters of excellent substance in vivid, saturated colors. The foliage is attractively fine-textured and aromatic. The plants stay neatly proportioned and require no staking, and the flowering season is long and generous. Often 3 to 4 months of continuous flat-topped color that bees and beneficial insects visit with extraordinary enthusiasm. In rich, fertilized soil, Yarrow becomes one of the most disappointingly floppy perennials in the border. Those stems that stand so beautifully in lean conditions, collapsing into leggy, sprawling, untidy messes that require staking and still never look quite right. The message from Yarrow is unambiguous and emphatic. Lean soil, no fertilizer, maximum beauty. Rich soil, fertilizer, maximum disappointment. List item number 5, Creeping Phlox, Phlox subulata. Number 5 is the spectacularly beautiful, slope-covering, spring-exploding creeping phlox. And this low-growing, mat-forming perennial is one of the finest examples on today's list of a plant that achieves its most extraordinary performance in lean, poor, well-drained conditions with absolutely no nutritional supplement required. Creeping phlox evolved in the thin, rocky, well-drained soils of the eastern North American mountains, conditions where soil nutrition is minimal and drainage is sharp. In these lean conditions, it produces the dense, tight, finely textured foliage mat that covers itself so completely in vivid spring flowers, that extraordinary, seemingly impossible blanket of pink, magenta, lavender, and white that makes creeping phlox one of the most dramatic spring garden spectacles available anywhere. Fertilize creeping phlox, and that tight, compact, densely flowering mat loosens and opens. Growth becomes faster but less dense. The perfect carpet-like form that makes the spring bloom display so spectacular becomes open and straggly. And the flowering, the extraordinary, complete, foliage-covering bloom that is the plant's greatest glory, becomes less complete, less dense, and less spectacular. Plant in lean, gritty, well-drained soil on slopes, banks, or rock garden positions in full sun. Feed nothing. Water to establish and then leave alone. The lean conditions will produce the most extraordinarily beautiful spring display you have ever seen from any low-growing garden plant. A river of vivid color flowing across dry, rocky ground that needs no nutritional assistance to create its magic. List item number 6. Russian Sage, Perovskia. Number 6 is the ethereal, silver-stemmed, atmospherically beautiful Russian sage, Perovskia, and this Central Asian native is one of the most drought-adapted, the most nutrient-efficient, and the most lean soil-loving perennials available for any sunny garden, border, or container. Russian sage evolved on the dry, rocky, nutrient-poor steppes of Central Asia, one of the most climatically extreme and nutritionally limited landscapes inhabited by any ornamental plant. Every aspect of its physiology reflects this origin. The silver-white stems and fine-textured aromatic leaves minimize water loss. The deep root system maximizes moisture and nutrient extraction from poor soil, and the entire plant's growth and flowering response is calibrated for lean conditions where vegetative growth is naturally restricted and flowering is the primary energy investment. In lean, well-drained soil with no fertilizer, Russian sage produces those magnificent, silver-stemmed, lavender-blue flowering specimens of extraordinary atmospheric beauty. Upright, well-structured, firmly self-supporting plants with a silvery haze of bloom that catches afternoon light with breathtaking effect. In fertilized, nutrient-rich conditions, it produces lush, fast, floppy growth that requires staking, loses the beautiful silver stem quality that makes it distinctive, and produces significantly less of the flowering display that justifies the garden space it occupies. Grow in the leanest, most free-draining soil your garden provides. Add no fertilizer, ever. Cut back hard in spring, and enjoy years of genuinely breathtaking, completely self-sufficient container or border performance that rewards your non-intervention with increasing beauty every season. List item number 7, Sedum, stone crop. And our 7th and final no-fertilizer flourishing perennial is the drought-defying, 4-season beautiful sedum. And this succulent perennial closes our list as perhaps the most emphatic example of a plant that genuinely, measurably, visibly thrives in lean, unfed conditions and declines in rich, fertilized ones. Sedum evolved in rocky, dry, nutrient-poor environments across the northern hemisphere. Cliff faces, rocky outcrops, thin soils on sun-baked slopes, where nutrition is minimal, drainage is instant, and the plants that survive are those that have mastered the art of thriving on almost nothing. The succulent leaves that store water also reflect this lean soil adaptation. The plant has internalized its resource storage rather than depending on external soil richness to supply what it needs. In lean, well-drained soil with no fertilizer, sedum produces the compact, neatly structured, attractively succulent foliaged plants with flat-topped flower clusters of excellent substance that make it one of the finest 4-season border and container perennials available. The growth is dense and self-supporting. The flowers are numerous and beautifully formed, and the seed heads that follow, those architectural persistent structures that provide winter garden interest, hold their form cleanly and beautifully through the coldest months. Fertilize sedum, particularly with nitrogen-rich feeds, and the response is immediate and disappointing. Fast, lush, soft growth that creates tall, floppy plants incapable of supporting their own flower heads. The flat-topped clusters that stand so beautifully in lean conditions droop and collapse in rich conditions. The compact architectural quality that makes sedum so valuable as a border and container plant is entirely lost. Grow in the leanest soil or most free-draining container compost available. Feed absolutely nothing, and allow sedum to do what millions of years of evolution in nutrient-poor environments have prepared it to do. Produce extraordinary, completely self-sufficient, four-season beauty from the barest, most nutritionally minimal growing conditions you can provide. And there you have it, 7 perennials that flourish without any fertilizer whatsoever. Lavender producing its most compact, most fragrant, most abundantly flowered display in lean, unfed soil. Coneflower standing firm and blooming boldly on the same thin soils its prairie ancestors inhabited. Catmint forming its most beautiful, most densely flowered mounds in nutrient-limited conditions. Yarrow staying upright and spectacular in the lean, rocky soils it has thrived in for thousands of years. Creeping phlox covering itself in the most extraordinary spring bloom display in poor, well-drained conditions. Russian sage producing its most beautiful, most silver-stemmed, most atmospherically magnificent display in the leanest soil available. And sedum building its most compact, most structurally perfect, most four-season beautiful specimens in the most nutrient-minimal growing conditions possible. The most important message from today is this: not every plant needs what most plants need. These 7 perennials have evolved in conditions of genuine nutrient scarcity, and they have turned that scarcity into their greatest strength. Honor their evolutionary history. Grow them lean, skip the fertilizer, and watch them reward your non-intervention with some of the most beautiful, the most effortless, and the most genuinely spectacular garden performances available anywhere. Sometimes the best thing you can do for a plant is absolutely nothing. Thank you so sincerely for watching today. It means everything to us. Final CTA. If today's video helped you grow more beautiful plants with less effort and less expense, please give it a big thumbs up right now. It genuinely helps our channel grow and reach more gardeners just like you. If you are not yet subscribed, please hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you never miss a new upload. We have so much more incredible gardening content coming your way, and we cannot wait to share every single piece of it with you. We will see you in the next one.